Welcome back to College Knowledge. I'm your host, Dave Kozak. Alongside me is Joe, the college pro.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like it.
I'm shooting from the hip here, guys.
No, it's all good. No, Dave, it's always good to be with you. Dave Kozak is the CEO of the Elite Collegiate Planning and College Planning Network. It's always good to be sitting next to you, Dave, and pick your mind on different things here.
And I just have to say, I was thinking about your title, and you are the most credentialed college planner in the country.
This is true.
But I really like Joe, the college pro.
Joe, the college pro. That might be the new one on all the social media stuff. It's the college planning expert, but Joe, the college pro sounds. I might have to change it.
I mean, it's got a thing, doesn't it?
It does. It does have a nice ring to it. So we got a nice episode today, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited about the interview that we're doing later.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be fascinating. Great school, great professor, great subject matter.
Yeah. And so we are talking a little bit today about earth sciences. It's kind of the general theme of today, but
don't give it all away.
Not, little teaser.
That's it.
But obviously, as we get our episodes started, we have to break out some new college news that's out there. So let's jump in to start the show today with our College Confidential.
Yeah, so Joe, headline article, U.S. women are outpacing men in college completion.
Yep.
Including in every major racial and ethnic group.
Yeah, so women are surpassing men in earning college degrees, and the trend's been consistent across all the racial and ethnic groups, just like the highlight says.
And that's a shift. Right?
Yes.
I mean, that's significant. And do you have a hypothesis?
What jumps out to me immediately without doing any research whatsoever is I do think that there is twofold. Number one, I think that the trend of trades has been picking back up a little bit. I know that there's been, over the past few years, there was a lot of talk about, college isn't worth it. Look at the trades, and I think there's starting to be some people, and usually in the trades, you're talking men, right? So I think that's number one. I think number two, to be honest with you, I also think that there is and it's kind of what we talked about in our last week's episode about DEI.
Yeah.
And I think, when we talked about it, when we found out there are some people that did it wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you see certain trends that we don't have enough women graduating or in college, there's an artificial shift.
Yeah.
And now, just like we learned last week, it's shifted. We need to get men back in. We're losing men. So I don't know if it has a combination of those things, but that would be my hypothesis, is that I think somebody tried to make this course correction and they leaned so heavy and kind of focused on maybe the marketing efforts. Everything was geared towards getting females in, and remember saying, well, you only want me, that trade school, you kind of combination of those two things. That would be my, if I had to put a guess on it, that's where I would go.
I would agree with you. Calamity of things occurring, right? I think the interview we did on DEI was perfectly timed and appropriate because, admittedly, he said, a lot of places did it wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why it got the bad rap that it did. And the trade conversation, that's not new. That's 2015 and on probably, where it was like, hey, and I remember talking to a couple of trades people that I'm associated with, right? I network with them, and they're like, dude, we can't find anybody.
Yeah.
And so the moment the demand skies up, people are like, well, I can go to college and spend $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, or I could jump over here and earn $100,000. And it's like, well, and then all of a sudden the pathway's lit. So I agree with you on that.
I'm curious. I would like to jump in more to see. I also, where my other topic that I would want to really dive in there is, all right, it's not necessarily, I'm not going to say it's a bad thing if women are outpacing men, but I would say, well, what are the degrees in? Are we shifting, because again, there's been all the talk about, the wage gap, and there's different ways that people look at it. And again, choices are what truly make that gap, right?
Yeah,
and
no doubt.
If we're looking at more females that are taking courses that are not high-paying degrees, Is that it's not solving the problem, but it's that if we looked at it the wrong way, saying there's a wage gap we need to fill. Oh, we need to get more women in college, but women are taking still education degrees that aren't necessarily those higher paying jobs. It was the wrong plan to try and attack something. The solution didn't match up with the problem. It just creates more problems whenever you have something like that. So I'd be interested to dive in a little bit more to see, okay, great, there's more degrees they're getting, but what is it? A certain field that they're overcoming? Is it engineering? Is it the STEM? Right?
Like, let's get a little bit more demographic on it too, from generations. Right? I mean, the baby boomer is baby booming. Right? They're all retiring. They're all like, is it more skilled nursing care type things? Are we graduating more of those people because that demand has gone and or has shown itself? And not to stereotype, but historically nursing's been a more female type environment, right? So at the end of the day, are we driving? Are there influences driving that?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. Our next article, not to get necessarily political, Dave, but there was an interesting article that came out and was basically saying more college-educated young men voted for Trump in 2024, and this was a huge swing.
Yeah.
Trump saw an increased support. College-educated young men, they favored Biden in 2020 by 62%. This year, 52% backed Trump. That was a 19-point swing.
Yeah. Wild. And that's from the Chronicle of Higher Education too, which is supposed to be apolitical, but it's the idea that they're doing that research and putting it out there and saying, hey, this is something to pay attention to. What do you think caused it?
I would have to say, honestly, it's what the past 4 years have been like from an economic standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we talk with people every day about their personal finances, Dave. And I've been talking personal finances with people as an advisor since 2011. I know you were a few years before me.
Yep.
These past 4 years, the conversations about monthly cash flow, I've never seen a shift that has happened these past 4 years.
No, it's funny too, because I started in financial services in 2008. And literally my launch into the career was the worst economic crisis that we'd seen since the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And cash flow wasn't the problem. Everybody's 401ks went down by half. But like some wealthy portfolios got lost too. But like this problem didn't exist. The inflationary runaway was wild. And then you drive interest rates up to try and slow the inflation, and you basically pause everybody's ability to spend and buy. And so, especially, and we've talked about this, and I've done a lot of interviews with a lot of really well-educated people on the subject, and the difference between men and women in their sort of like every high school, college age budding professional goes through a oh God moment, like an oh crap, like this is getting real. And it creates anxiety. And for women, historically, it's the transition from college to high school, from high school to college, where that sort of anxiety creeps in. For men, historically, it's at the graduation point of college and having to go to the workforce. And so when you see guys increasing their vote because of the financial backing, they're assuming, my assumption, again, my hypothesis is they're going better opportunity for jobs and lower prices. If we go here, we may be able to afford our life. And so, that's my assumption.
Yeah. And I mean, I think straightforward, I think very rare, at least in my lifetime, our lifetime, we've never had the situation where you could say, what were the past 4 years like? What were the past 4 years like before that? It's the same person. We've never had that where you can literally say, well, what was it like 4 years ago? Not what could it be like?
Yeah.
You had 4 years with President Trump. You had 4 years with President Biden. And I know it wasn't President Biden that was running, but we've never had that true. Okay, compare.
Were you better for this?
Were you
4
better
years
here or better there? Because it's, again.
Well, I think there's another piece to it as well that matters is Trump was relatively sophisticated in his approach to delivering his message. He took a different path. He did not focus on mainstream media because of all of the stuff that happened over the previous 8 years. So he was hitting the podcast. He was meeting them where they were and educating them differently to change perspective. Because if you don't do that, right, and people are getting their information from different places now. Yeah. And so, and I think everybody across both aisles, across the board, has realized the mainstream media tells what they want to tell to sell more of what they want to sell. Yeah. And so, again, I think there's a lot to that.
This was by far a different campaign that I have seen in the past.
Yeah. Modernization of political campaigns.
Yeah. I mean, because there is that, you see the debates typically. Okay, debates, how different are they, in the past? But mainstream media, like you said. But I think those long-form podcast interviews that J.D. Vance and Trump did, and they did a lot of them.
Yeah, they did.
That peeled back the curtain to kind of say, this is who these guys are. They had normal conversations about things that you don't see on mainstream
media. The one
media.
piece I saw, Theo Vaughn, J.D. Vance, talking about Waffle House, what's your go-to meal?
Right.
And you go, all of a sudden you go, dude, he's just a dude that needs to eat, and he's getting a quick bite at a Waffle House. And I think there's a humanization to it, and I think delivering that to the college student, and especially the college male, is going to have an influence on it, because we can all relate to what's your go-to meal. I think Fiesta omelet. Waffle House.
There was a lot of relatability. So I think combination of things, but I think maybe a little bit of a perfect storm. But yeah, so definitely a little interesting piece when we were pulling up some articles to discuss today.
All right, Joe, let's move on to the brag board, buddy.
Brag board.
What do we got? What's your go-to?
So I had it was a great little compliment that came to me. I have been pretty active on social media.
Yeah.
And, we talked earlier, the college planning expert. But
Joe the College Pro.
That's it. Joe the College Pro. I think I'm going to have to make that change.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It took a minute, but we got there.
So I opted to, really try and help. I know that there's a lot of families that we haven't been able to meet. People don't even know that there is a Joe the College Pro that's out there.
Yeah.
And so I just started answering FAFSA questions. Like what this is the question on the FAFSA. It's open. How do you answer this question? The amount of feedback that I've gotten from just people of saying, thank you, this is so clear. We were lost. We had no idea. We were about to include our IRAs and our 401ks on the investment questions. A little pat on myself on the back that it was a message that, again, I am passionate about this, that I know I did everything wrong when I was a senior. I know my parents did everything wrong with me and my siblings when it came to the FAFSA and the whole college process. So that passion, if I can help a few people, I know that, hey, you're seniors, there's a whole lot I could have done if I met you a couple years ago, unfortunately. But if I can just make a couple of videos and help you guys out, it was nice to see the feedback and some of the following that I got from that. So, yeah,
well done.
I helped some people out with their FAFSAs that I have never even met. So that felt good.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I had one similar. But not. I'm not nearly as proficient on the social media as you are. But I had a family come in, and they were in like panic mode. FAFSA just opened.
Mm-hmm.
They saw a presentation that we did, and they wanted the help.
Yeah.
And there was nothing to help with.
Yeah.
It's not like some magic, but pull a rabbit out of the hat for them.
Mm-hmm.
And, they were stressed about money because they didn't have the money to pay for college. And it wasn't a fit for our business model. And they brought in the list of schools. And they had no idea how the whole thing played out.
Yeah.
And I said, have we been accepted in any of these schools? And sure enough, she had been accepted. And she was accepted at a private school. I'm not going to names to identify people. But I basically pulled up our software package. The Search Faster technology. I put in their financials. I said, listen, this is what you're going to have to pay. You guys are all right. You're good. They were thinking $78,000 and it's going to be 12.
Wow.
Right. And so I just said,
awesome.
Listen, calm down. You're in. If she and it happened to be their daughter's number one school on the list.
That's
and
great.
she had gotten into it, but they had no idea how it was actually going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
and they were panicked. And so I said, I sent them on their way. I said, you guys are in good shape.
Yeah.
You got to wait until about April.
Yep.
Right. Because I don't know when your financial aid package and financial aid award letter is going to come. And I think it was just, again, sigh of relief for them. They got it. And, you know, I imagine they're going to come back for their next child, and we're going to help them out. But
yeah. And again, that is, I think sometimes just having someone like an expert to talk to, and it's confusing. Like I saw on TikTok, like people just don't understand the process, and then having someone that can calm you down, right, and guide you through. I think that's, you know, again, stress reliever. It's a stressful time, and you talk about having to wait till April. If you don't know, guys, colleges, hurry up. Now wait. Now hurry up. Tell us what you're doing.
Well, it's crazy
and it's
too.
Stressful, man.
It's hurry up. Wait. Oh, we got the answer. No, you got half the answer, right? Yeah, you're in, but you don't know what you're going to be asked to pay, right? Yeah. And so and then it's another wait cycle. And just as a point, this is away from the brag board, but be patient with the progress.
Oh, yeah.
Be patient with the decision. Get the information first, then make the decision. I know students, you've been fighting, you've been working, you got the applications in. It's been a long process. Be patient.
Yeah.
You're in. Let's figure out if it makes sense financially.
And I got to touch on that because I know you've probably said this to this family, but you're accepted. Great. You know, before that award potentially comes in April, that school is going to be doing everything they can to be saying, hey, commit. Yeah,
100%.
Because if you don't have all the cards on the table yet, you don't know what offers, what it's actually going to cost, and you commit too early, do they have to give you the great package? Yeah, I don't know, right? Have all the cards on the table. Don't jump the gun, even if you know that's where you're going to go to school, as long as the price is right. Please just make sure you're making an informed decision. And by informed, I mean you know everywhere you've been accepted and you know what every school is going to actually cost. It's because there's potential that you can maybe get the price a little bit lower just by waiting. So don't jump the gun. Sorry, I had to jump in. I'm sure you told me.
I did, and you're spot on with it. So
yeah, think it's time for. We've had some good stuff going on, so I think it's time for a quick sip, Dave.
Yes, sir.
So, Dave, for this week's quick sip, you know, we're talking about our science. We're going to have a great guest in a minute here to dive into it. So, my question for you. Our science is, you know, I think, you know, okay, Earth, geography, but then I started thinking about it for my personal life, and I say, okay, is it a lake or is it a beach? Which one is it for you?
It got to be a lake.
Okay.
There's so much more to do.
Yeah.
Although I guess you need a lake and a boat. So hold on a minute now. Now, see, we've gone too far. I don't know. I can't make that decision. Is there a boat?
This is part of the question because my answer is beach all day. Because what do you do on a lake?
Well, if you don't have a boat, then
right,
you do
exactly,
nothing.
Right. Yeah, look, I like body surfing. You know, you get waves, you get the sound of the waves crashing.
I'm an activity guy. So like if there is no boat, I guess I got to go beach.
Yeah,
because there's more to do just with the raw.
Have as much fun as a lake without a boat as you do with an above ground pool.
That's not fair. The above ground pools can be fun.
Sure they can. What do you got for me today, Dave?
All right. Joe.
Yeah.
Does the metric system make us look bad?
Royale with cheese. I guess
it's a good sandwich.
Yeah.
If you've never had it, it's quarter pounder in Europe.
Yeah. I guess it's funny because it's only like so many times in my life where I've actually been confused at the fact that it's not what the rest of the world uses. And the only time that I've actually looked it up was when I was setting a world record for the longest keg toss. And they said, well, how many kilograms was the keg? And I was like, what? It was 27 pounds. Like, why are we even? I don't know if it makes us look bad. Honestly, I live in my bubble here, and we use, quarter pounder. It's not a Royale with cheese. It's a quarter pounder. We all know it as a quarter pounder. I'm sorry. I'm not a world traveler. It's never affected me in my life. Doesn't make us look bad. Maybe, but I live with it, and I live in my world, and it's pounds, quarter pounder.
I mean, it's got to be conditioned. It certainly makes math harder.
Yeah.
Right.
I got Siri. How many kilograms is 27 pounds for my empty keg that I can submit my record to Guinness?
Well, I think it makes us look bad.
In what way, though? Just in what way? Does it make us look dumb? Like, is that we're?
No, I think it's the same way that we've moved past a lot of things for things that make more sense. The metric system makes more sense. It just does. Mathematically measuring, like it my opinion. So like, there's a lot of things we don't do anymore, right? Mode of transportation, not horses anymore. Like we've moved on, right? So like I believe the metric system came from somebody held out their arm, a king of England at one point, and that was the measurement was what made a yard. So like, I mean,
that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, again, I don't know these things. I'm not a scientist. I don't claim to be. I just am saying, like, when you're doing math, I think there's probably more sensible ways to do it. So that's the only reason I say.
I guess I haven't expanded how the metric system makes us look. It's just one of those questions they've never really thought about, because I live in a world where it's, again.
Do you know who Nate Bargatze is?
I do not.
He's a comedian.
Okay.
When we're done this episode, I need you to type in Nate Bargatze Saturday Night Live and listen to his. Just listen.
Okay.
For everybody, Nate Bargatze Saturday Night Live. He does a skit where I think he's George Washington. He's one of the founding fathers, and it's priceless on just this subject.
All right. I like it.
So,
hope you enjoyed this week's Quick Sip. So, Dave, as we jump back into the discussion of earth science, we have a great guest that is going to be joining us here.
Absolutely. So today, everyone, we're interviewing Dr. Christy Tiampo, the professor, director of Earth Science and Observation Center, ESOC, at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Dr. Tiampo's groundbreaking research explores the process behind natural and human-caused hazards like earthquakes, volcanoes, and landslides, using cutting-edge technology such as satellite imaging, GPS data, seismic analysis. She works to uncover how these phenomena occur and, most importantly, how they affect our infrastructure and communities. With a PhD from CU Boulder and degrees from Stanford and Tufts, Dr. Tiampo is a leading voice in geophysics, geodynamics, and remote sensing. Whether it's forecasting eruptions, landslides, or earthquakes, or studying how human activities can induce seismic activity, her work provides critical insights into how we understand and prepare for these powerful forces of nature. All right. At this point, we'd like to introduce our main guest, Dr. Christy Tiampo, Professor Director of Earth Science and Observation Center at the University of Colorado at Boulder. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
So give us again, we like to get a little background, a little information on who you are, and then some details on what you would share with prospective students and clients about sort of higher ed, your particular course of study and area of study in higher ed, and what people should consider as they go through it. So give us a little background.
So I started out as an engineer. I was a civil engineer. I got my degree in New England back in the 80s. I got my Bachelor of Science and then my master's eventually in civil engineering, structural engineering, and went to work like most people do, most engineers. I worked for 10 years as a construction engineer for the Corps of Engineers. So I helped build things like runways, taxiways, housing for the military, civil projects like breakwaters and protection, shoreline protection in New England. I did that in New England. It was a ton of fun and I loved all of it. But as happens, life changes, and we were moving out to Colorado, and I decided with some encouragement from my husband to go back to school and get my PhD, something I'd always wanted to do. So I actually went to CU. I got my PhD here in 2000. Okay. And because I went back and I thought, what do I want to do? I'd also, as an undergrad, had my second major in geology, and I loved it. I loved everything to do with geology and earth sciences. So I did my PhD work in what's called geophysics. So earthquakes, volcanoes, how the earth moves, those kinds of things. And when I graduated, I wanted to be a professor. And so I eventually got a job in Canada. So I then went to Canada for a dozen years, worked as a professor there. And again, studying natural hazards, earthquakes, volcanoes, landslides, those kinds of things, just outside of Toronto. Eventually, I was looking to come back to someplace home in some ways. And I applied for and got this job here in the Department of Geology here, and in this big institute called CERES, which is an environmental science institute here at CU. I'm as the director of a small center, the Earth Science and Observation Center, largely because I study the Earth using remote sensing tools. So using satellites that fly in the sky or planes that fly over the sky, or I have students who use drones to study how the Earth is changing, how it's moving. Think of the changing Earth. And in my case, the changing Earth often involves things that are dangerous to people.
Fantastic. So the journey took you out, brought you back, and I guess give us a little background on the importance of earth science today and what people don't know.
I tell all my students, it is amazing how many students we see today who apply and want to make a difference, who are worried about things like climate change, about what their future is going to look like, what the Earth is going to look like, what their world is going to look like in 10 or 20 or 30 years. And I tell people, if you really want to first understand what's going on, and second, make a difference, you really want to have some background in earth sciences, because what it teaches you is what's the common sense way that the Earth is changing, what makes sense. When somebody, and you don't have to be a scientist, you can be a journalist or a doctor or somebody who stays home with their kids. But when somebody, you see a news article, a post that tells you that bad things are happening or bad things aren't happening, if you want to ask yourself, what do I think makes sense here? What's going to matter to my life? If you understand the basic principles of how the Earth works, which is what Earth science teaches you, then you can make a judgment for yourself and your family and your future, and a better judgment anyway, one that you feel informed and you have more control over your future. And I think that's the really important thing about everybody learning a little bit about earth sciences.
Sure. When you talked about the potential dangers, whether it's something that is natural, whether it's something that, maybe something that is, we'll call it a little man-made.
Yes.
What are some of the differences there? And when we talk about hazards and dangers, what exactly are we speaking about?
Generally, we think of hazards as events that happen in the Earth that are going to have an impact, a negative impact on both the natural life around it, and that includes humans, and our infrastructure. That might be a volcano. So a volcano is largely a natural hazard. Humans don't have much effect on volcanoes. We never have. And so again, a volcano is an example of a truly natural hazard, one that's going to occur probably no matter what we do. But if we understand when and where they're going to occur, then we can mitigate. We can not build in certain locations. We can stop planes from flying through ash clouds. There are a whole number of ways in which we can prevent loss of life and loss of infrastructure, even for natural hazards. When you're talking about things that human beings affect, that might be climate or climate change. Are we warming the Earth? Are we adding greenhouse gases faster than has ever been done in the past? And is that going to change the Earth more quickly than is easy to adapt to? Or Are we, for example, pumping a lot of wastewater way down deep in the earth where we won't drink it and it'll be perfectly safe, but it might be causing earthquakes? It's commonly called induced earthquakes. And, those are things that we can do and humans do that affects hazards or the changing processes on our Earth's surface.
Sure. You mentioned, these events, obviously some of them can't be predicted, but maybe kind of knowing more, you can mitigate some of these things. What is part of the process in potentially, predicting? Is it just kind of studying the past, understanding, like you're saying, just understanding the earth, and when certain indicators happen, it's like, hey, we're headed down this path. This might happen. Let's prepare for it. How does that happen, and how hard is it to predict these things?
That's a really interesting question, because yes, a lot of that comes from what we've learned, studying the earth, understanding how it works, understanding the physics of it, the chemistry of it. What happens when we pump water in the ground and we basically change the stresses, the forces underground, and that makes more earthquakes more likely to happen in certain locations. Why is that? And we understand that, again, because we've spent a lot of time studying the earth and we have some idea of what goes on inside. There are two things that make natural hazards particularly hard to predict or forecast. One is that when like, for example, hurricanes, we all know that we forecast hurricanes, but and in some sense, we can do that pretty well because it's relatively easy to measure. We take a lot of measurements of our Earth, and it's relatively easy to measure the atmosphere, right? We can send out satellites, we can put things up. It's relatively transparent. That's not really the right term for that, but it's easy to send up instruments and measure temperature and precipitation and Earth surface and sea surface temperature and those kinds of things. It's a very fast moving system. That means that that affects the accuracy of those forecasts. Where's a hurricane going to hit landfall? Those kinds of things. How strong is it going to be when it hits? What are the wind speeds going to be? It's a very fast moving system. The solid Earth, the part that we stand on, is a much slower moving system. It moves very, very slowly. Not minutes, seconds, and hours, but years, decades, hundreds of years, and eons. Right. But so that means that that we have more time to forecast those big events. The bigger problem is that it's also much harder to measure inside the Earth, right? It's solid. It's hard to put a lot of instruments inside it and measure the actual stresses, find out where the magma is. We've gotten much better at it with what you can commonly think of as secondary sources in recent years, secondary measurement techniques, seismometers, measuring how the Earth is changing on the surface. What does that tell us about what's growing underneath? Those kinds of things. But it's a harder medium to measure, which means we know less about what's going on inside.
So, I mean, fascinating stuff. And my big question, because we've interviewed a lot of different engineering professors and science professors, I always like to get the take on the technology advancement, right? Because if you look at, we're business people. So in the business world, technology has just gone absolutely bonkers. I mean, us being able to do this interview from across the country,
I know.
It's been around, but not to the level and quality that we can do today, right?
That's right.
So how much has the pace picked up in the research you're able to do because of the technology that you can utilize?
I give a lecture every year on remote for a particular class here at CU in what we call the Space Minor. It's a class that to help students from all fields figure out how they might fit into the space world, right? And what we collect for data in remote sensing, that has been, in terms of what we want to learn about the Earth, the biggest change. We collect petabytes of data now on the order of days to weeks. We have so much data we almost can't use it all. And so that's that sort of exponential increase in data collection, measuring the surface of the Earth with satellites, measuring the interior of the Earth with seismometers, measuring the temperature of the oceans, getting information on the deep oceans. All of that data coupled with the AI revolution. And I tell people a lot that one of the reasons, a lot of the things that people use for AI now, those were around when I was a grad student, 30 years ago now. But you didn't use them. They didn't use much because we didn't have the data to feed them, to teach them, which is what we have now. So that coupling of big data, and again, these new and revolutionary computational abilities, AI, the hardware we can work on, the visualization tools that are similar to what we're using here right now. You couple all of those together, and again, we're exponentially learning more about well, not just the big scales, how fast does a tectonic plate move, but in the small scales, where is that magma now under a volcano? Where, again, is it possible to actually watch landslides move? Those kinds of things. That was impossible 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and now we have a lot. And again, we're just going to get better at all that. It's amazing. Yeah, it's the same thing you see in business.
Yeah, and I look at the correlation. Like, you go back to just being an architect 20 years ago, right? At the advent of computer-assisted design, like you had guys at drafting tables hand drawing stuff and now me, a civilian, can basically go buy a program and just mess around with design because the technology has come so far. So the ability to process the information is huge. And I agree, the AI is helping. It's good and bad. As every advancement has its positives and its cons, right? So let's switch gears a minute and talk about CU and Boulder in specific. What makes University of Colorado Boulder a leader in earth science research and education?
Yes, we. So I always like to advertise.
Sure.
CU has over the last 10 to 15 years been ranked top 5 in the world in earth science education in the United States. It is, and often it's 1 or 2. And that's really a function here of all we have to offer. All of the interdisciplinary earth science we do, and earth and environmental science we do. So CU Boulder itself, we have a great geology department with leading researchers in a number of fields. We have several institutes, one very big one, the one I'm part of, but also several smaller institutes which do different kinds of science related to that earth sciences. So again, at Ceres, we have 900 researchers working on environmental issues in collaboration with NOAA, who has one of their main centers here in town. But there's also an institute that's called INSTAR that studies Arctic and Alpine research specifically, again, world renowned in that. We have, again, on top of NOAA, there are any number of smaller, less well-known, centers and groups and institutes here, the Southwest Research Institute, NCAR, which is, and UCAR, which are 2 atmospheric research centers here in semi-governmental, well, it's complicated, but again, largely funded by governmental research and funding. We have NREL down south. We have a number of other groups that work and measure the Earth itself. And then we have, on top of that, we have an engineering faculty, a College of Engineering, that is every year receives the most funding from NASA of any engineering school in the country. And so again, those numbers vary from year to year, but that's who they are. That's what they do. And so we have another center, we have another institute that helps launch missions for NASA. And for other space agencies from around the world. So that agglomeration of that sort of critical mass of people who do that kind of science means that for students who want to come here, for undergraduate students who want to come here, it's a great opportunity to get first a great basic education in science and earth science, but also to take part in research opportunities that are going to help them learn about who they are, what they care about, what they want to do with their science and their future, or do they want to be we have a space minor? Do you want to be a journalist who largely studies and learns about and talks about space and space issues, right? And writes in those areas. I mean, again, we have this huge swath of opportunities for students in those areas, which I think is unparalleled in the country, to be honest with you.
When you are talking about students that you mentioned, there's so many that want to help, right?
Yep,
they're seeing these, and then having the opportunity to come in and what is the process like for, hey, I know I want to help, I'm interested in science, but I don't know what specifically fields I may want to pursue. What does that pathway look like for a student at CU? How much, you talked about the interdisciplinary pieces. And so what does that look like? When do they have to make a decision? Is it prior to coming? Is it third year? What does that look like?
Yeah. So it kind of, to a certain extent, I mean, again, every science field is different. So I want to be very clear about that. Earth science is particular. If you want to go to med school and take the MCATs, it's generally well known. You start early and you start taking those courses early. That's how it's done. But in earth sciences, there's a lot more freedom, a lot more flexibility. You can start by taking some classes. We have a School of Environmental Science. You can take some classes with them. Are you more interested in policy than going out in the field and measuring? Right. Sure. So you take an earth science class. We send you out. We send you on some labs. Some field trips and some labs. We have so many great field trips out of here. But anyway. And then, or again, you can take a course or two in environmental science and again, study more policy and policy and how the process works of making that change in a political or social way. Again, you can take, again, associated classes in chemistry or math or physics if you think you might be more interested in the sort of technical theoretical side of what we do. But again, you would do that in your first year or two. And there are a lot of, like most universities today, and CU is not the only one that does these things. It has become sort of a common thread in science education that the more opportunities you offer students to do research, or at least do hands-on education, hands-on learning, the better they learn, and the sort of the more happy they are with their sort of future career when they're done. And so there's a lot of opportunities to get involved again in sort of fieldwork or research or undergraduate research here at CU. I tell people, take some classes, find out what you like and you're interested in, and then go talk to the professors. I know there's this model out there of the professor on a pedestal who doesn't, all of it, talking to students kind of beneath them. That's not true. I can't tell you of one professor I know who isn't. I don't know of any professors here who are not more than willing to sit down and talk to students about what they think is interesting, what they'd like to do with their 4 years here, and then their careers after that. And so we don't all have the opportunities to have students in our lab. We don't all have the funding or the bandwidth for whatever reason, but certainly there'll be plenty of professors out there who first want to talk about what you want to do and then help you figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, we've interviewed numerous professors, and the message is always the same. They love their job.
Oh, yeah.
And they want to help. And the idea of being a mentor, one of our very early episodes, Dr. Kenyon Bonner, the dean at University of Pittsburgh, talked about lifting while you climb. And, as you get to the top now, hey, pulling the people up behind you. And every professor that we've talked to has that same message. So family, students, I think that was a great example that there's this myth of professors on a pedestal. They're unapproachable. I have not seen that, from everyone.
We've interviewed hundreds.
Yeah. It's talk to them.
We're people just like hours. You. We're people just like, we got hobbies, we got lives, we got kids, we got all of that. And I tell people all the time, I learn from all my students. I'm still learning. And so I enjoy all of those interactions because it makes me a better teacher, makes me a better researcher, but also because as you said, the whole point of this process is to live, rising tide lifts all boats. We all do better if the students are doing better, if our society, if the people in our society are understanding better what's going on. It's absolutely the way we want to do it.
Well, and there's a common theme, and for all the listeners, right? Common theme is mentors sometimes appear, but more often than not, mentors are you approach and they become the mentor because you had the intestinal fortitude or the courage to say, hey, I'm not sure this is right for me. Can I get your advice? And that's when the mentor shows their color. So one of the other themes that everybody has, every professor we've interviewed, every dean, 180 episodes or so, is just ask.
Yeah.
Ask for help if you need help. Ask for direction if you need direction. Just ask, because it makes all the difference.
I think the other thing, I just want to touch on this real quick. The students that we've interviewed, the professors that we've interviewed, even professors' stories of their own, their professors that they had, having conversations and opening things up, you build a relationship. And there have been so many stories where a professor has said to someone else, you should do this. You should look into this. And it was something that wasn't even on someone's mind, right? I didn't know that was a possibility. I didn't know there was that field of study. And like, you'd be perfect for this.
Yep.
And but if you don't have those initial conversations and those initial relationships, that conversation never happens. So,
the one thing that professors can offer students, which I think that they don't often, they don't know, they simply don't know, is that because of the way our jobs work, almost all of us, it is part of the job to know what's going on around us, to know about the science over here and the person doing that over there, and this new field over here that we never heard about, right? That's just, it's sort of part of our job to go out and read about those things and learn about those things. And that means that we are a resource for not just that thing, and not just that thing we're teaching you in the class, but a bunch of sort of related subjects you might be interested, or fields you might be interested, or new studies you might be interested in, that because you don't have the background, you don't have the context as a student, you wouldn't know about. And, and that's, again, my best mentors have always been, when I look back, the people that I reached out to. Again, mentoring programs are great, and it's nice to have somebody match you up, particularly when you first arrive at a school, if you need somebody to tell you, what's the best eating fault. Where should I be getting my food? Right. So, that's great. But the ones I really connected with in the end were the ones I reached out to and were willing to answer my questions.
Yeah.
And one last question in that, because you mentioned it a couple of times. You talked about field trips, and you talked about it, like the geography of where Boulder is, and it's like there's opportunities specifically in your field, right? Like, give us a little lay of the land of how the environment influences the research and the opportunities that are there.
Yeah, so it is a beautiful spot, as most people know. The climate's great, the weather's great, the scenery is great. There's a lot of great outdoor sports, all of those things. I don't probably need to sell Boulder to most of your listeners. Watchers, but the ability to go out in the field here and see the processes that you are studying in class is not unique, but rare and one of a kind. We have what's called the Mountain Research Station up on the top of Niwot Ridge, and we take students for field trips up there. We do research studies up there. There's all kinds of instruments up there that study mountain processes. At the most, and another example, at the moment, there's a lot of interest here because of the fire a couple of years ago in wildfire. And there's always been a significant group of excellent researchers here who do study wildfire, but there are opportunities now, which are partly have to do with the fact that wildfire is now a very big concern just in the West, all over the country, but particularly in the Mountain West here, in the Western U.S. Plus the fact that we actually have places to study those wildfires, right? The wildfire that happened down here. We had researchers literally who are down the hall from me who took instruments out, put them on the back of trucks, and drove them through those neighborhoods to measure the air quality of around those homes to see whether people should be going back and what might be affecting them long term. Or you can go out to out I-70, head west, and you can go and actually study some of the landslides which are happening because there are wildfires that take the trees off the slope, and then rainfall comes and then we get these landslides that wash down. And we do literally go down and measure it, as well as look at the satellites, which is what I do. But so there's this excellent opportunity here to actually go out and study both a lot of the hazards that are affecting people out here, but also just sort of general processes like snow in the mountains, right? So it's a ton of fun.
I mean, they talk about real estate, right? And what's the number one rule of real estate? Location.
Right,
And you're matching the coursework and study with the environment around the locations there.
Yeah, it's great.
So as far as where you see things headed You know, what changes do you see? What excites you about, you know, the future studies of earth science and specifically, you know, your field? Where do you see things going? What do you see in the future here?
You know, I see big opportunities for all students in the ability to take all this data we're collecting and put it together with computational resources and tell us new and exciting things about how Earth is changing really quickly, but also long term out there. Also, too, for students, I think there's a lot of great opportunities for new, innovative, sort of interdisciplinary ways to make your career work. Right. I am routinely approached by computer science and engineering students who have skills in that area, but want to apply them to, again, some of these problems that people are so concerned about, climate, et cetera. And there are a lot of earth scientists without ability to use those computers or use that data in the same awesome way that, again, those scientists do. So there's a lot of real interdisciplinary options. There is a huge area these days in public health and biology and earth sciences, trying to figure out how the spaces we live in affect our health, our longevity, and both in terms of, again, individual health, group problems, but also in terms of the money we spend and how we're going to actually efficiently and effectively use that money to help people in the future, right? That's going to be a big deal as we move forward. So it's not just the sciences that matter here, but again, the economics, the social science, the policy that goes with all that. That's not really my area of expertise, but which is going to be very impactful. Public health is going to be a big issue in the next few years. From all of these sort of science issues that we see.
Yeah, I think it's a huge issue now that is been understated for a long time. I mean, we're seeing stuff that we've never seen. So, before we get into our fun little wrap up here, what advice do you have for students interested in earth sciences pursuing careers in geophysics and hazard mitigation? Like, you're a junior in high school. What is your PhD level advice for these families and students?
I have three things. One is there are almost an infinite number of opportunities if you do earth sciences. So, you can go work in the resource industry, mining and oil and gas, if that's what you want to do. Resources will also include things like groundwater, hydrology, and forestry, and then there's this and agriculture, right? And so that's just the resource side of what we do. And then there's, again, sort of the monitoring and then there's taking those and applying them to companies and to businesses and all of the economic of earth science. So there is, again, if you have an interest and you're interested in earth sciences, you have other interests, you will and can find a really useful and satisfying career out of it if that's what you want to do. The second is then what you want to do is go to a school that's good at earth science, someplace where you're going to, there are a lot of really great schools for that around. Again, Boulder, great. But a lot of what we think of as the bigger state schools, the California school systems, the Michigan systems, they have great earth science departments too. Washington, again, there's a lot of really good places you can go to learn about earth sciences, and then just jump in, take some classes, meet some people, and if something strikes your interest, there's a field trip going out that you volunteer for or go to, or there's an opportunity to help work on collecting some data someplace, or someone's doing a study on how air quality affects infant mortality. Any of those, jump in, just join, and again, meet people. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's funny because you said air quality and you went one way, and I was like, I wonder if anybody studies how air quality handles a baseball going out of the park. Like how a golf ball travels. Yep. But like, it's the same principles applied to a different subject matter. So your passion could be basically wide open is in terms of, and if you can develop a habit and a joy and a passion and combine it with the science and do that, I mean, I think that's magic.
Love it. Thank you. So we have a quick little, when we wrap up our interviews, we call it our quick six. Yep. So it's 6 quick questions, kind of a lightning round type thing. So as I get this one started, I was asked, what's the one piece of college advice that you would give but most people would disagree with?
Oh, get more sleep. Get more sleep. It's always better for you. You'll be happier if you do that.
If you could take one college class again just for fun, which one would it be?
Oh. I hate to say this, but intro to geology, I loved every second of it. I guess that says something about my life, but yes.
Yeah. What's the weirdest college tradition that you've ever witnessed or participated in?
Oh yeah, the weirdest one. There was, I didn't. The weirdest one was at Tufts, which is where I went as an undergrad. There was this rock that had a plaque on it that was donated for this guy with money. He donated some money to the university, and he wanted to learn about anti-gravity. So it was called the anti-gravity rock, and so it used to disappear and wind up in places that were high up, like tops of buildings and in trees and stuff. Yeah, it eventually got put in a basement someplace where students couldn't find it. But yeah, so that's the weirdest one.
What's one skill you learned in college that you still use every day?
Skill I learned in college I still use every day. I write things down. I still, when I took notes, I am partially at least a kinesthetic learner. So if I want to remember something, I write it down, and I still do that.
Right. My last one. What's one thing about college that you think should change?
If I had my way,
mm-hmm.
the stigma that goes with which school you go to and which field you choose. So my firm belief is that what students should get out of college is to learn those things that will help them have again, useful and satisfying career. And and it shouldn't matter what that is. And yet we have all of these preconceived notions about what's a successful college career and what's a successful field to be in when you're done.
Yeah.
And that should be individual. It shouldn't be placed on us. It shouldn't be given to us.
I love it.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
We see it every day
with,
with parents walk in, my child's going to be this. And we talk to the kid and they're like, I
don't know what I want. Most of them don't know, and not unjustifiably don't know what they want.
Correct. We always
still have so much to learn.
The objective is to get out of school so that you're ready to learn more, right? It's lifetime learning is what makes people successful. My favorite question, and I don't know why, but I just love it because people give them to me and then I read them and I get smarter. So what is your favorite or most influential book you've ever read? What's a good dramatic
Mila
poem?
18. I think that a book that's stayed with me for a long time is Mila 18.
Say it again for me.
Called Mila 18. Mila 18.
Cool. Awesome stuff. Well, we appreciate it. This has been a fantastic interview. Very insightful. For those that are just catching, this is Dr. Christy Tiampo, Professor and Director of Earth Sciences and Observation Center at the University of Colorado at Boulder.
Thank you. It's been thoroughly enjoyable.
Awesome.
So
Dr. Tiampo, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, Joe. So fantastic interview.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was, and I think it was. The answers were good. The information was good. And what's your takeaway? What's your biggest sort of nugget out of that?
Yeah, it's one that I think both spoke on a couple times throughout that interview. But the idea that earth science, like a lot of other fields, it's got so many branches that could potentially take you different places, and you may not know exactly what you want to do. I mean, Doctor was talking about journalism, right? It's studying earth science to become journalist, political activity, right? Like, okay, hey, if I want to be a politician and this is something I want to attack. Like, I got to have a basis of this. So I thought the way of understanding that it's yet another field, another field of study that you can start with, right, or kind of come into to get knowledge and branch off and find that passion. And the pieces that we spoke about being open, talking to professors to help, right, have conversations, ask questions, but very interesting field in how many different ways it can take your career. And if you're passionate about it, I know you love saying at work, you know, if you love what you're doing, it's still work. You know, it's not that you don't work, you're still going to be working, but it's a lot easier to get through the day. So if you can go through, you know, an undergrad education and be able to have a field that has so many potential branches and pathways that you can follow a passion, I thought that was really interesting, and I liked how we highlighted that throughout the conversation.
Yeah, I think my takeaway is that, you know, I loved her comment about, and when we did the lightning round, and she said, you know, the stigma, if you could take away the stigma of what you should be, and like the ranking of the schools, I interpreted it probably more than she meant, but the idea that, you know, earth sciences is sort of this gateway science. And if you, and I mean, this is coming from an engineer, right?
Yeah.
She went she did geology, then she went mechanical engineer. I think she said mechanical, right?
I think it was mechanical.
Either, yeah. But then she came back to the earth sciences because she loved the geology so much. Yeah. She just wanted to be involved in that. And, you know, the crossover that you can do, but if you go, you get a couple of core science classes in, then you can start to really like, oh, that one intrigues me. Like I liked the physics more than I liked and you can pursue that. So I like the idea of earth sciences being a gateway science and where you can go. Yeah,
and I would say we didn't get into it, but I think a lot of people ultimately think, you know, earth science is not necessarily something that all parents would be happy that their kids pursuing. You know, and I think today's episodes shed some light on how it can be something that is, I'll say, one, positive, right, that it potentially can make a change, but I think it can be rewarding for kids too. Again, if they are passionate about this field, that there are so many different ways that they can potentially help. If that's what drives them, is have a passion of wanting to help make change for the world, right? The planet, for the population. We were talking about just public health and how that's changed. Like if that's someone's passion, this is a field where, you know, there's a lot of things that can be done rather than being a doctor, right? And helping one person, the amount of research that can be done can help thousands, if not millions of people. I think it can be pretty rewarding. So it's not all... I know that if I talk to some people, I'll say, you know, maybe my father, and he said, you know, I said, Dad, I'm going to want to study, you know, earth science. He's like, what? You one of those climate change people? Like, I know that's what he would say. That's what he would think, you know? So I think today it's understanding a little bit more. It's why I love our episodes so much, where it dives in and just peels back some of those misconceptions and understanding it more. And again, I was very impressed. I was unaware today. What I really learned was that how much, you know, a study in this field can branch out. So. Yeah,
no doubt. And I think a relatively silly takeaway from it was the fact that they had to remove the rock and put it indoors so it would stop disappearing.
The anti-gravity rock?
The anti-gravity rock.
That's a good one.
You know, the funny thing is like, I'm picturing like 6 guys trying to get this thing on an elevator, you know, like I can't imagine how big the anti-gravity rock was.
Yeah. But I know I would have had fun with that.
Yeah, certainly.
So, definitely a good episode today. You know, some good stuff today. Looking forward to next week's episode.
Yeah, sure.
We're going to be diving into. You're going to not going to want to miss this one. We're talking about admissions, and we're going to get into it. The college admissions process. We're going to have a special guest to talk about. You know, a specific school, what are they looking at from an admission standpoint? So definitely an episode you don't want to miss.
Yeah, we're going to try and get the information you guys all want to hear on that, right? Yeah. What really matters for the student who's applying to the school, and how do they look at it?
Yeah, so going to be a good one. And lastly, do not forget, we are going to have registrations opening soon. But for listeners of our show, again, this is a one-time, limited seats available, unique opportunity where Dave and I are going to be hosting a live workshop, webinar, masterclass, a live episode of College Knowledge on Tuesday, January 14th.
That is correct.
I think we're going to do it at 8 o'clock. Where it's going to, again, seats are
8 o'clock Eastern
Standard Time. Seats are going to be limited, but we are going to go over the full kind of need to know information, how you get started on the right foot, why this thing gets so complicated, really dive in. And
I would almost say, Joe, we're gonna take what are we 180 episodes into this show at this point? We're gonna take all that knowledge that is necessary, gained, and deliver it.
Yeah, and that again, when you reserve your seat, one caveat, guys, you have to have a kid that is younger than senior year of high school to attend. But that's going to wrap up this week's episode. Dave, anything before we officially sign off, sir?
No, I'm pretty good.
All right. Well, to all of our listeners, thanks for joining us. Tune in next week. Watch out for the registration for our workshop. And until next time, stay safe, stay strong, and stay sane.